these equatorial currents are very, very important. And if you get in the current, you're going to come to America whether you like it or not. It will be very difficult for you not to come. If you were in a raft and you don't have a sail and you don't have an oar and you get in this current, then you will be in America, or you will wash up on the shores of America in about 50 days. That means also it's a fast current because there's about 5,000 miles there. It's a strong current. It's a powerful current. So this is very, very important. And when we talk about Mansa Kankan Abu Bakr II, his 2,400 boats will go directly into the equatorial current. That will go straight into the current. He will probably come out of the Gambia River. He may have come out of other rivers. The kingdom of Mali was a river empire. It was also a land empire. It was also a sea empire. The kingdom of Mali was also the most wealthy kingdom in the world in its time. No one could hold a candle to it. What was the wealth of Mali? Gold. Gold. The kings of Mali controlled the gold markets. They had gold that was beyond imagination. Where did they get that gold? Where do you think they got it? Where do you think they got the gold? Sorry? And this brother here, where do you think they got it? Is there gold in Africa? Yes, there is gold in Africa. There is gold in Africa, especially in South Africa. There's a lot of gold, and in West Africa there's gold. The Golden Coast, right. So there's a lot of gold in Africa, no question about that. And that's a very interesting story. Some historians have said, though, that when we read about the gold that was in the kingdom of Mali, they must have had some other source as well, because they had a lot of gold. In the kingdom of Mali, and this is really interesting, it's very important to understand that often when we think of people before our time, we think they were isolated in the world. Well, when you have as much gold as the kingdom of Mali had, you're not isolated anymore. People will come to you, right? They will come to you. In the kingdom of Mali, they had to have small coin. They have to have small coin. Pennies, nickels, things like that. In the kingdom of Mali, what did they use for small coin? Do any of you know? How would you buy an egg in the kingdom of Mali? Do you have any idea? Not little specks of gold, but little specks of something else. Seashells. Seashells. And the seashells they used in the kingdom of Mali, which were money, and a lot of the First Nations of this land also use seashells. Okay? But in the kingdom of Mali, the little seashells they would use came from the Maldive Islands in the Indian Ocean. That's very important. That means that they had direct connections with the Indian Ocean, and they were able to purchase special seashells in the Maldive Islands that you don't have in West Africa. And then they're able to use those seashells as coin, because gold is extremely valuable. It's very hard. You'd have to have a tiny speck of gold for an egg, right? So you see, you're talking about a world empire. You're talking about an empire that has access to the world, and the world has access to it. It's also very interesting that in the Americas, the First Nations, they used wampum. And what was the main thing? You know, wampum is a wampum belt, right? And they sew on it valuable things. And what are some of the most valuable things you sew on a wampum belt? Beads and shells. Beads and shells. Seashells. And this is another thing that when we talk about Africa and the discovery of America, one of the points that certain scholars have made is that wampum comes from the contact area. The contact area is right here, the Caribbean, and this is southern Mexico. That's the contact area, because when you come across in the equatorial currents, that's the most likely place where you will end up. So your contact with land will probably be in the Caribbean, possibly Barbados. Barbados is a straight shot from the Gambia River, straight shot across the water. Or it might be in Jamaica, it might be in other places. Okay? But they say that wampum spreads from the contact area north, meaning also that the Native American use of wampum, it may also have come from contact with Africa, and especially the Empire of Mali that used seashells for money. Okay, so this is very important. And these equatorial currents, they were like conveyor belts. You get on that current, you're going to have a very difficult time to get out of the current. And it will push you to America. Also, you have currents that are coming from Asia. This is called the Black Current. And that will take you across the Pacific, and it will bring you to South America. Okay, so these currents are really, really important. And in the 20th century, there were scholars who believed very strongly that human beings had come to America also by sea. And they wanted to show that you could do it. One of the most famous persons who did that was Thor Heyerdahl. And he built a ship called the Ra, which it was a ship like the ancient Egyptian reed boats. And he tried to take the Ra from West Africa to America, but the first journey was a failure. The boat became soaked with water before he got to the Caribbean, and he had to abandon it. And then he just went back to the drawing books, because when he built the Egyptian boat, he didn't put in a certain mast and a certain rope that ties the front to the back together. So he said, let's build it again and let's do that. And then he discovered that when you do that, you don't get waterlogged. And the second time he was able to make the journey. Then he built another raft called the Kontiki, and he used that to come across the Pacific the same way. So that was a big thing in the 20th century. There were other people too who just wanted to show us that, look, it is not impossible to cross the water. So when we go into American history, the oldest civilization that we know about in America is the one called the Olmec civilization. O-L-M-E-C, like you see here. Now, the Olmecs were in the contact area. They're in southern Mexico. I'll show you. And you remember where the contact area was. This man, is there any doubt that he is an African? Not a doubt at all. Not only does he look like an African, but he is wearing an ancient African war helmet. And you'll see that when we look at the Mandinkas, that their war helmets are not very different from this. These are metal bands that they put on their heads so that if they get hit by a sword, it won't crush their skull. So this man is definitely an African, and these are called the Olmec heads, and they are believed to be portrayals of the rulers of the Olmec civilization. How long ago were these people believed to have been in southern Mexico? 700 BC. 700 BC. That's almost 3,000 years ago. That's a long, long time before Columbus. And again, how could they possibly get here? By sea. Of course, by sea. And ancient peoples, they populated the world by boats and rafts. That's the way that ancient people got around. The world was a different place in those days. You didn't have highways. You didn't have maps. And often, if you were to go on land, you've got forests, you've got mountains, you've probably got other people that are there before you who may not be friendly, right? So in the ancient world, people prefer to travel by water. And they will use rafts and different types of boats, and often they will try to stay near the coast. And they will stay in rivers and things like that. But that is the easiest way and the safest way to travel.